Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 3 and 4 of Steven Universe Future, Rosebuds and Volleyball. And well, the name of the game for these episodes are Mommy Issues, ladies and gentlemen, as well, Rosebuds actually begins with Steven trying to figure out where to put his mom's, painting. So basically, throughout the entire run of the show, there's always been this painting of rose quartz that's been hanging up in Steven's home. After the home got reconstructed, the painting was put in a proper place, but it was still in a very public area. As such, Steven kind of just wants to find a new place for it since, well, with everything that's happened with his mom and, well, what's come out, he thinks that maybe it's best if she wasn't, like, literally hanging over their lives or something. However, as Steven's contemplating this, well, the sky suddenly seems to get a lot darker, and the reason for this? There is a visitor from beyond the stars here. Specifically, the human zoo has arrived on Earth. And no sooner do they do that the Zoomans make contact with Steven in his little hub. And of course, this once again allows us to be reintroduced to J10 and Y6. Although Y6 does all of the talking because J10's voice actress was not available, so it's all them. And immediately upon seeing them, all those negative emotions I felt about the Zoomans all resurfaced, and I suddenly had the urge to still burn the place to the ground. But unfortunately for some humans on Earth, the Zoomans aren't completely compassionate to everybody anymore. Specifically, they all hate Greg. Yeah, they're all, like, remember how in the zoo they all choose into Greg, but he said he's not interested, and they all just started crying? That essentially, they all started resenting him to the point where when Greg actually does end up talking with J10 and Y6, Y6 just ends up yelling at him and tells him to go listen to one of his CDs. He doesn't say it like that, but that's essentially what he does. But either way, Y6 ends up inviting Steven to come on board the zoo and, check it out, and Steven does go, with Amethyst tagging along because, hey, she wants to see the Famethyst again. And sure enough, the zoo has actually been refurbished. With Era 3 now in full swing, the humans in the zoo are pretty much in control. They run the place, they keep it going, and in Y6's own words, it's now a cruise ship, with all the Amethysts that were once stationed there now just kicking back, relaxing, enjoying themselves. We even see Carnelian giving a flower to one. It's adorable. And Holly Blue Agate is just kind of having a meltdown throughout the whole thing, because after all, her whole thing was about being orderly and keeping everyone in line, and yet literally nobody's doing that anymore. The Amethysts aren't doing their jobs. It's just chaos in her part, and while the other Amethysts do try to encourage her to, chill, lay back, basically her idea of a good time is receiving orders from the Diamonds. But basically anytime she wants to get an order, well, all the Diamonds talk about is Steven, which is even funnier as as she's ranting about Steven, he's right there, and when she realizes he's there, she freaks out and then just backs away, clearly embarrassed, which just shows that her ass-kissing nature is still in full swing. But either way, yeah, Amethyst ends up going and hanging out with the other Amethysts, but Y6 has something special that he wants to show Steven, which is the whole reason why he and the other Zoomans brought the zoo to Earth at all. As such, he pulls Steven away and brings him to another room. And as he's opening up the room, he says he wanted to see Steven's face when he showed him this. And so he opens the room up, and standing behind it is Rose. Well, more specifically, a rose quartz soldier. Well, 3, actually. And then when Steven actually looks further into the room, he sees there are more rose quartzes, all just loafing around, doing their own thing, socializing. There are a couple that are playing, ball. And, yeah. This is what Y6 wanted to show Steven. And I mentioned before how when I talked about the zoo episode, there was one moment that kind of endeared me, and that kind of ultimately made the Zoomans, or more specifically Y6, more endearing to me. This is the moment, because when Steven sees all the rose quartzes, his face just goes completely blank, like, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Chindy jumped off the bed and rattled the tablet. But either way, yeah, Steven just pulls up face, and Y6 goes, yes, this is the face I wanted to see, and I laughed, okay? I laughed so hard, it's expert level trolling right there. And what I love is that the entire time Steven talks with the rose quartzes that are there, Y6 is looking at him like, oh, did I do good? Do I do good? Like, this dude, I swear to God. Like, that alone kind of just endeared me to him. I still hate the Zoomans as a whole, but Y6, you're good people. You're good people, my man. But Yeah, but yeah, Steven doesn't actually interact with all the available rose quartzes. He only meets with the three that came to the door. Just as how amethysts and rubies don't always seem to be like clear cut copies of each other. These rose quartzes, while looking like the one we know, are very much different. There's one that's very hyperactive and bouncy and friendly and wants to just say hi to Steven. There's one that's chill, laid back, kind of has just the smoother hair, and one that looks like a dead ringer for the Rose that we knew, but likewise her skin tone is a little bit pinker, and throughout the majority of the episode, hold on one second. Again, apologies, there was a thing. But either way, yeah, there's one rose quartz, like I said, there's one rose quartz that's like a dead ringer for Steven's mom, but her skin is a lot pinker, and for the majority of the episode, she's just kind of in the background, not really saying anything and just kind of staying quiet, while Hyper Rose Quartz and Chill Rose Quartz do most of the talking. But either way, it's just awkward all around, as Steven really has no idea how to talk to these people who are trying to be all like, hey, what do you like? What's your life like? How do you breathe? Do you know what the ocean is? I never smelled the ocean, I never seen the ocean, yada yada yada. Basically, it just feels super awkward for Steven while he's trying to put on a brave face because he has to remember that these ladies aren't his mom. It's easier said than done, especially since they all look like her to varying degrees. They all have, because the thing is, they are the body type for rose quartzes are pretty similar. And again, they all have distinct differences in them. They have different shades of all their skins are different shades of pink, all their hair looks different, and while they're all voiced by the same voice actors, they don't all sound alike, which I think that these are all the same voice actors I think the voice actress who does all the rose quartzes is the one that played our rose quartz slash pink diamond. So kudos on her. That's some good range because because all the voices for the roses feel very distinct and unique in their own way. But the point is, yeah, Steven's having trouble separating them from his mom. But either way, he still tries his best, and even at one point says, "Why don't you come to dinner?" And so while Steven is kind of again still a little iffy, the Roses do accept the offer and do come down to his place for dinner, even though they don't fully understand how eating works. Though they are excited to find out. Unfortunately, the awkward levels do seem to continue rising, as while Steven is just eating dinner and the Roses are just kind of sitting around the table, either just taking it all in. Well, the other two crystal gems that didn't go onto the zoo ship, namely Pearl and Garnet, are kind of a captive audience. And what I love is at one point Greg ends up walking in as everything's going on, and when he sees the Roses, while Steven does invite him to come and sit down with them, he just nopes right on out of there because it's just super awkward. But eventually the awkwardness levels continue to rise as one particular rose, the Chill Rose Quartz, starts. I don't want to say she starts hitting on Pearl and Garnet, but it sure as hell feels like it. As she says to Pearl, if I had a Pearl, I would have had her like you. And then likewise, when she notices how tense Garnet is, she's like, hey, you want a massage? It's like, what the hell? Although, in case of Pearl, what kind of pushes her over the edge is when the dead ringer Rose Quartz asks her if she's okay. At which point Pearl and Garnet excuse themselves to the bathroom. As such, Steven eventually decides to go after them to see what's going on, but yeah, it's just as awkward for them as it is for Steven. And like Steven, they do know that these people aren't roses that aren't the person they know, but it's still hard to get past it all. Even knowing there's a distinct difference. The thing is, they kind of act like her to varying degrees. They are, and the thing is with rose quartz gems, they were created by pink diamonds. So there makes sense why there would still be similarities in their demeanors compared to the rose we know. So ultimately, yes, they know it's wrong, but it's hard to it's hard to separate the roses from their creator in that regard. As such, Steven decides to still put a brave face on and goes back out to see the roses, but they're still being overly hyper and happy, which just makes things even more awkward. Which Shy Rose Quartz, who's the dead ringer, does start noticing that Steven's not exactly comfortable. Not helped by the fact that he does end up eyeing the picture of his mom, and she suggests maybe they should go, but they're like, oh, come on, no, we're having fun. He likes having us here. And Steven, trying not to be impolite, asks if maybe they could have a slumber party, which the Roses agreed to, though they have no idea what sleep is. But either way, yeah, they go up to his room, they spend the night, they watch movies, they almost accidentally put on the video that Rose left for Steven, at which point they all try to go to sleep. But as they're talking, Hyper Rose Quartz talks about how much fun everything was, that they liked spending time together, and Steven just offhand says, yeah, I wish you guys could stay forever. At which point the Roses interpret that as a genuine invitation and think, oh, do you want us to stay forever? We'd love to stay forever, really? And Steven just he doesn't want to say yes, but he also doesn't want to say no. But eventually, yeah, the shy Rose Quartz finally breaks the silence because, well, she's not stupid. She sees how awkward things are with Steven, and she finally tells him, can't you guys get the hint? He doesn't want us here. And the other Roses at first try to deny it until they see Steven just kind of freaking out as he's biting his sheets, trying to, not to review, as he's just biting his sheets. And while he tries to say it's not that he doesn't want them there, the Roses interpret this as, okay, we overstayed our welcome, we need to go. As such, Shy Rose Quartz and Chill Rose Quartz just leave, while Hyper Rose Quartz, who got wrapped up in a sleeping bag, just bounces on out. It's hilarious and adorable. Steven, well, he feels terrible for what he did, so he chases after them, and he manages to meet them before they warp back to the zoo, and Steven finally does just kind of lay it out on the table. That, yeah, it's not like, it's like he said, it's not that he doesn't want them there, it's just that, again, they all remind him so much of his mother. And while he thinks he was able to move past all this, it just feels weird to seeing them here, and he knows that he can't blame them, but at the same time, it's just hard for him, and it's just been hard for him. But we also learn a thing about the Rose Quartzes. It's the same for them. The thing is, like Steven, they paid her Pink Diamond's crimes because they all looked like Rose Quartz. And as a result, they all suffered. They were all poofed and bubbled for thousands of years, missing out on so much just because of what their creator did. And the thing is, while they've been trying to put on a brave face for Steven, even Shy Rose Quartz admits that she tried to be civil, and so to speak, because she didn't want to blame Steven for any of this. At the same time, it was hard, and it turns out, yeah, even Hyper and Chill Rose Quartz were also putting on an act. In reality, they don't want to blame Steven. They don't blame Steven, but it's just super awkward, and they don't know, and they were just trying to work through it. Ultimately, however, Steven ends up finding common ground with that. And it turns out, yeah, he finally does start connecting with them genuinely, because at the end of the day, he starts to realize he starts to tell them that when he looked at them, he saw it was like his mom times 3, but they're not his mother. In fact, they're like siblings. After all, Rose created all of them, and all of them wound up kind of suffering for what she did. And if anyone can understand that, it's Steven and the Rose Quartzes. And so basically it does kind of get it out there, and the awkwardness does finally start fading away, because ultimately they have a genuine connection. That, yeah, well, they're still connected to Rose. As long as they're siblings, they're also connected to each other. And, well, and ultimately, Steven and the Roses are happy for that. Though they do finally decline Steven's offer, in air quotes, to stay. So the episode ends with with them deciding to warp back to the zoo, though Steven does say that they can visit whenever they want, and they happily accept that offer before they all leave with smiles on their faces. Just as Amethyst pops back after she's done partying with the other Amethyst, so that's nice. But anyway, either way, with that all over with, let's move on to the next episode, Volleyball. And it's here, and we start to see that with Steven's status as a universe-wide healer, so to speak, he's kind of set up his own little clinic in his house. Basically, anytime a gem gets hurt or their gem gets cracked, they go to Steven's place, and he's able to heal them right up by applying saliva to the cracked gem. And it's a kind of a regular thing in his place. Like, for example, the Ruby guards that are Nanafua's personal bodyguards tend to go there very often, though they never explain what it is that happens in their day-to-day lives that requires the daily visits. And likewise, a bunch of court soldiers like to play volleyball on the beach, and apparently volleyball gets very intense because they tend to visit Steven regularly when their gems get cracked. However, after Steven has finished healing them, his clinic, so to speak. Hold on again. Again, apologies. But yeah, Steven's clinic has a new visitor, specifically Pink Pearl, who wants to see Steven because, well, remember how I said how when she was first introduced as White Pearl, she had crack over her eye? Well, she thinks it's finally time to get that fixed. As such, Steven brings her inside, and he does the normal thing, gets saliva on his hand and applies it to her gem, but the crack doesn't go away. At which point, Steven decides, well, maybe he needs to try it. Maybe he needs to try actually applying it to the wound. But yet that doesn't seem to work either. And at first, Steven thinks that maybe it has something to do with his powers, but a quick test on a plant showcases no, his powers are fine. So it must be something with Pink Pearl herself. As such, Steven begins asking Pink Pearl questions about the wound. Basically he asks her if she. Sorry, Chinny jumped on the bed. He begins asking her if she remembers anything about her time when she was being controlled by White Diamond, but Pink Pearl just brushes off and says, nope, just 6,000 years, like, blip, gone. And then likewise, Steven says, well, I guess maybe you don't remember how you got that scar then. She says, what? Oh, no, this came from before. And so Steven thinks, wait, so White Diamond hurt you before you were under control? It's like, oh, no, this wasn't from White, this was from Pink Diamond. At which point, yeah, hearing his mom's name does cause Steven to start freaking out a little, especially when he starts turning pink again, which does get Pink Pearl freaked out a little, but Steven just kind of brushes it aside and calms down as he says, it's just baggage, it's not Pink Pearl's problem, no, we have to work on resolving her issue, and while Steven himself may not have an answer, he may know someone that could. As such, he drags Pink Pearl away, and they go onto the beach to the volleyball game. Why? Because ultimately the one that can help her is the coach for that volleyball game. Well, our Pearl. There's like a slight bit of awkwardness as once Steven brings Pink Pearl up, our Pearl is like, oh sure, did you come to compete? But likewise, it gets brushed aside as she pops down and Steven tries doing introductions. Although he does find it a little awkward to keep referring to these two as Pearl, since easy to get everyone confused. As such, he decides to give Pink Pearl a nickname, and kind of bereft of something, not really knowing what to call her, he just calls her the first thing that comes to his head, especially since there's a volleyball game going on next to him. He calls her Volleyball, which is what we're going to be referring to her as through the rest of the video, especially since if I kept saying Pink Pearl and Pearl, I think it will get a little confusing. But, yeah, basically, Volleyball happily takes the name because, well, because the thing is, that kind of does remind her of Pink, as Pink Diamond used to give everyone little nicknames too, and she kind of still fondly remembers that. And yeah, much like Pearl at the beginning of the original Steven universe, Volleyball is still very much smitten with Pink Diamond, even if Pink Diamond is no longer around. As such, Steven does let Pearl know that they want to fix Volleyball's crack, and while Pearl is still operating under the assumption that the crack was caused by White Diamond, she does know that there might be somewhere in the universe that might be able to heal her, specifically a place called the Reef, which Steven, and Volleyball end up warping to via the Galaxy Warp, and yeah, basically the Reef is, well, where pearls were made. It's also a place and basically it's essentially just a glorified gift shop in a sense, as pearls can become here to get refurbished, get enhanced, get little accessories, and even the overall structure of the reef looks like a giant clamshell. So it's essentially just where you can bring your pearl if you want to keep them up and running, or just want to glamorize them to some regard. As such, once Steven and the pearls arrive there, Steven is able to turn it on since, well, he's a diamond, and at first the Reef does think he's Pink Diamond, but he corrects it. And he informs the AI controlling the Reef, called Shell, if it can help Volleyball. And it's ultimately the AI says it can, and then leads Steven and leads the Steven and the Pearls to another side of the room, where after they see some memorabilia, and we learn that Volleyball's weapon is a ribbon wand, which apparently Pink Diamond gave her, also leading some hilarious tension. They do end up entering a room where Volleyball can get scanned, and they can figure out what the problem is. As such, she steps on this little pad, and she gets scanned, and she's all smiling, thinking, well, what's going to happen? Well, what do you think the problem is? Only for Shell to tell them that they can't help her. As such, Steven wants to know what the heck's going on, and Shell does confirm that, yeah, while Volleyball is clearly has damage to her physical form, her gem itself is fine. There's no problems to it, meaning that whatever the cause of this is, it's not physical, it's psychosemantic, which Volleyball starts vehemently denying, saying, no, she's fine, it's all fine. And as she says that, the crack actually starts getting bigger. So yeah, clearly everything is not fine. At which point Pearl finally gets a little upset. She says, how could White Diamond be so careless? Only for Volleyball to explain, no, this was caused by Pink Diamond. Which does cause Steven to freak out, as he didn't want to talk about it, but Pearl wants answers, and Volleyball finally goes on to explain what happened. Basically, the reason why she got this scar, it was because Pink Diamond had another tantrum. So, since Yellow and Blue continued telling Pink Diamond that she couldn't have a colony, Pink Diamond decided to go over their heads and ask White Diamond directly. And White Diamond, like Blue and Yellow, essentially told her, no, you're too irresponsible, you don't need a colony yet. And Pink Diamond, well, she threw a tantrum. And therein lies one of the problems. Because it turns out, while we know Rose as a healer, as she clearly did have powers that were meant for aiding people and helping them and healing them in certain regards, apparently once upon a time her powers worked very much in the opposite direction, as rather than healing everyone, it caused destruction. And her tantrums apparently were so big, could be so great, and her screams so loud that they could literally crack the very foundation of a room. Like, let me think about it this way. Let me compare it to this way. Remember back in Change Your Mind when White Diamond pulled Steven's gem out of his belly and it reformed into a second pink Steven? Remember how in that scene when White Diamond said, "Where's Pink Diamond?" and the thing yelled out, and Pink Steven yelled out, "She's gone," so loud that it shook the room? It's that. That was apparently what Pink Diamond used to do. And Pearl does not believe it. After all, in fact, the thing is, the person that Volleyball is describing seems very different than the person that Pearl knows. As apparently, back in the day, Pink Diamond couldn't keep a secret to save her life. Whereas with Pearl, she apparently was too good at keeping secrets. And then likewise, when she starts talking about how Pink Diamond, as she tries talking about how destructive her powers were, Pearl talks about how she was a healer, and basically, the people they're describing are two very different individuals, and the more the Pearls argue, the more Steven starts getting upset, to the point where he finally gets where he starts glowing pink again, and then yells at them to knock it off, as he's just had it up to here with hearing about all the terrible shit his mom has pulled. He says he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't even want to think about it, he just wants to fix it. And he emphasizes this last statement by stamping his foot so hard, and as he yells and stamps his foot, it shakes the room, literally causing a crack that goes up the walls, and it causes Volleyball to huddle up into a fetal position, shivering and scared. And when Steven takes a look at his reflection in the floor below him, he's a little horrified by what he sees. Unfortunately, though, Shell interprets Steven's outburst as, well, him not being satisfied with his pearls. And so Shell decides, with pearls this damaged and corrupt, well, the only real solution is rejuvenation. Which Steven's horrified by, but at this point, Shell is not listening to a word he says, as she thinks that it'll be for the best. His pearls will be better than new. And so before either Pearl can do anything, Shell ends up bringing up a literal shell around the pad they were standing on, and then immediately just starts trying to shock both pearls so they can get poofed and be reset. Steven, of course, tries to stop this, saying this isn't what he wanted, but while inside the shell, the Pearls do finally have a moment as Pearl apologizes to Volleyball about not believing her, that that even now she's still making excuses for Rose, and likewise Volleyball's like, is that what I've been doing? But you didn't mean to hurt me. But Pearl just tells her she still did. But she still hurt you. You got upset, and likewise, as Volleyball is starting to cry, she says, "Well, what do you do? It's like, what do you do? How do you move past? Like, how do you move past? How did you move past this hurt?" And Pearl's response: pull her into a hug and say, "I didn't." At which point, Volleyball returns the hug, and they start glowing. Not because they get poofed. No, rather, their forms turn to light, and they start fusing. Look at the light growing bigger, so much so that it ends up breaking the clamshell that Shell trapped them in. And as it gets bigger, we are introduced to a brand new fusion. We are going to call her Mega Pearl for the sake of differentiating. But yeah, much like how as we've seen in the past, when two gems of the same type tend to fuse, they just end up fusing into like a bigger version of themselves. But here's the thing. While the gems involved in this fusion are both pearls, they're both very different pearls. And so as a result, the big Mega Pearl they become, well, her skin tone is a mix between pink. Her skin tone is a mix of pink and white. A mix of pink and white. She has Pearl's gem up here, while Volleyball's gem is down here. And rather than wearing a fancy ballerina suit or Pearl's jacket and jeans combo, she's like decked out in full royal regalia. It looks like she's got a little. I'm sorry, I'm misremembering here, but I think has like a little crown on her head. She's wearing a cape, a royal shirt and pants that are open up at the belly button to let her gem breathe. She just looks really regal and badass. And the instant that Shell detects that Mega Pearl is in the reef, immediately Shell turns on the defense mechanisms, and well, we start to see what Mega Pearl's weapon is. It's a fusion ribbon wand / spear, and basically with the elegance of a gymnast, she just starts whooping through all of the defense mechanisms. However, this is still a temporary solution, because at this point, they're essentially lambs in the lion's den. If they want to fix this, they have to shut the reef down by going back to the entrance, which is easier said than done, as Shell is intent on not letting Mega Pearl get there. As such, Mega Pearl is able to get through most of the defenses rather easily, but unfortunately, Shell ends up throwing up enough walls, and even manages to hold Mega Pearl in place so that she can't get close. As such, Mega Pearl decides, well, it's up to Steven now. And so we see another added benefit of her ribbon wand / spear, as the ribbon at the end turns into a giant spear tip, which is able to chuck right through a lot of the walls, making a hole big enough for her to throw Steven through. As such, as Steven flies, he manages to throw up his shield and skid to a halt, and yes, he does manage to get to the control panel and shuts everything down, causing pretty much turning Shell off, deactivating the security system, and freeing Mega Pearl, and allowing her and Steven to leave the reef. As such, they end up returning to Earth, and while Steven apologizes that their journey didn't really amount to anything, Mega Pearl assures Steven that it did actually help in the long run, as both Pearls never really got the full picture when it came to Rose Quartz / Pink Diamond, as one Pearl knew that she wanted to change, but she didn't know why, and the other Pearl didn't think that she would ever change at all. But now they have the full story. Now they have each other. And so with this revelation, Mega Pearl unfuses back into Pearl and Volleyball, and very nice thing, we see that Volleyball does seem to have a little bit of emotional catharsis, as we see her smiling and her eye is sparkling. But as for the damage to her other eye, we don't know. We don't know if it's healed or not. But at the end of the day, even if it isn't, she has people that she can at least turn to. As the episode ends with her, Pearl and Steven looking out of the ocean, and Volleyball just resting her head on Pearl's shoulder. It's sweet. So, okay, yeah. My thoughts on these episodes. First, Rosebuds. This one it's fun. It's just all around fun. As I mentioned when I talked about the zoo episode, when it comes down to the Zoomins, I still hate them so much, and seeing them again in this episode did not make me like them anymore, except with the exception of Y6, as he is very much a troll. But that said, though, I do kind of like that we do get to learn more about it. After all, the Zoomins themselves were still imprisoned. While they were used to the lives they lived, ultimately, they were not free to do whatever they wanted. They were still very much entrapped. And so with Steven now implementing his policies around the whole galaxy, and that also means that a place like the human zoo wouldn't continue staying in operation. So essentially it's been repurposed. The Zoomans have been let go and been given full control over the ship. They can take it wherever they want, and basically, like they say, like Y6 says, it's just a cruise now. Everyone can just go about minding their own business, having fun, chilling. The Amethysts are just laying back and taking in the scenery. Holly Blue is a wreck because she isn't in control anymore. It's actually pretty nice. And it's actually pretty nice, and I at least kind of dig that. And like I said, Y6 very much earns points for me for what he pulls on Steven in this episode. Just the fact that he says, "I can't wait to see your face," shows him the rose quartz. It's like, yes, this is the face I wanted to see. Like, Y6, we're bros now. We're bros. Bring it in, man. Bring it in. It's like, that's enough for me. I like that. That was funny. I like that. So I like that we get more extension on that. But the real meat and potatoes of this episode is Steven and his relationship to the roses, which, yeah, throughout the entire episode, you can really feel the awkward tension in the air. As while Steven tries to put on a brave face for the roses, be nice to them, because after all, they weren't responsible for what his mom did. They didn't lie to everyone, and they're just as much victims in all this as everyone else was, as they got poofed just for looking like his mom, and now likewise, here they are free again, and yet Steven can't really bring himself to talk to them, or even express any of this to them. And as a result, the entire episode really just feels awkward, especially with Hyper Rose Quartz and Chill Rose Quartz being so overly friendly with Steven and his family, and yet Steven has no idea how to return that energy. And the thing is, the awkwardness does feel real, because the thing is, there's a huge elephant in the room, no matter how you want to slice it. These people look exactly like Rose, and while Steven tries his best to ignore all the big problems and just kind of pretend everything is cool, it's still there. It's essentially just hanging around in the background, and everyone can see it. Everyone knows it's there. It's just that no one wants to address it. And so throughout the episode, as Steven tries to ignore all the problems, which actually, there is a common thread between both episodes, which I'll get to when I'm done talking about them. But basically, throughout the entire episode, as Steven tries to hold it back, it just leads to everything getting worse and worse. Nobody wants to talk about what Pink Diamond did, but they have to but eventually they do have to acknowledge it. Which I like that it's Shy Rose Quartz that finally brings it up. As you can tell, like Steven, she's very much feeling the tension in the air. And unlike the other Rose Quartzes that are so enraptured in putting up a brave front and being overly friendly and social that they can't even see the obvious signs, Shy Rose Quartz does pay attention, and she does notice these things. She is very much aware that the crystal gems are feeling awkward for even being in the same room as her. And then likewise, when Steven clearly is feeling tension from seeing them, she recognizes it and even thinks, maybe we should go. I think we're just making things worse for him. But ultimately, and it's even her that finally, and likewise, when the whole proposal of having them stay forever is brought up, she's the one that finally gives the other Rose Quartzes a hard dose of reality, and by extension Steven, by stating, "Don't you get it? He doesn't want us here." As she fully realizes that what they're doing just by being there, they're making Steven feel worse, and they're making Steven feel worse, and as a result, she thinks maybe you're better off without us. But at the same time, finally acknowledging the issue is what finally leads to genuine growth. As now that it's out in the open, Steven finally talks about it. And I do like that little bit of emotional catharsis we get in the episode, as Steven does acknowledge that, yes, he knows that he shouldn't have an issue with these people, but they remind him so much of his mom that it's hard to ignore. And he doesn't want to blame them. He knows that they're blameless, but yet it's still just hanging in the air. But what I like is that even in the face of that, the Rose Quartzes come clean as well, and it finally does actually lead to genuine growth, as both sides acknowledge the issues they've been facing. And by finally acknowledging them, it leads to a genuine connection between everybody. Steven finally does get a chance, as Steven and the Roses have one thing in common. or a few things in common. Both of them were created by Pink Diamond, and both of them paid for her mistakes. And so being able to confide in someone so completely like this, it actually gives everybody emotional catharsis and allows their actual genuine connection to grow. As now it's out in the open, they finally can talk about it, and as a result, it does lead to some genuinely sweet. It actually does lead to a genuinely sweet moment, as everyone acknowledges that yeah, they're always going to be connected to Pink Diamond, but at least they can confide in one another and they can trust each other. It's actually pretty sweet and nice, and I dig it. I dig it. It's actually really good. And so, on the whole, Rosebuds is actually a pretty sweet and hot. It's actually a pretty sweet episode, especially with it ending with. Oh yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. The episode actually did end with Steven finding a place to put his mom's picture. He stowed it in lion's mane. So again, it helps that Steven is trying to move past it. But again, it actually does lead to some genuinely nice stuff as Steven and the Rose like I said, it's a good episode on the whole, and it's pretty sweet and nice to see Steven kind of share this moment and know that there is someone else in the universe that he can confide in who does know what he's going through. It's again really nice and sweet and all that mushy crap. But as for Volleyball, this is a fun one. This one is not full of little hijinks, which another thing I liked about Rosebuds was the humor, the cringe comedy that came from Steven trying to pretend that everything was fine, that everything was sweet and nice, when in reality he was just freaking out and was just trying to maintain his composure with all these women around that looked like his mother. So I found, which I admit, that was funny. In the same case, and this happened. The same thing was with the gems. Like there was one funny scene where when Steven said, "I'll just go in there and everything." And nothing will be super weird. And then when he enters the bathroom, Pearl's like, "Steven, isn't this super weird?" And Garnet, normally the voice of reason, says, "Pearl? Of course it's super weird. I love it." But the thing is, Rosebuds, while it did lead to eventual emotional catharsis for all the characters involved, it was for the most part just a fun little side episode. Whereas Volleyball, there is nothing fun or silly about this episode. No. Volleyball is rife with tension and emotional fatigue. As from the minute we establish what the main conflict for the episode is, ultimately the tone is set. It all really starts when Volleyball name drops Pink Diamond and claims that she's responsible for the scar. As immediately the instant that Pink Diamond is brought up, you know that tension is going to be thick. As Steven has clearly established that he still has mixed feelings when it comes to his mom at all, and likewise the instant that Steven learns that his mother is responsible, he kind of goes into hyperdrive about wanting to help Volleyball at all, which is what leads him to seeking out Pearl for help, and then likewise getting her involved in all of this. So here's the thing. Throughout something that's kind of apparent throughout this episode and a bit in the Rosebuds episode is that Steven is kind of in denial. And it's a similar case with Volleyball as well. In fact, let me bring something up that I actually did note when I watched the episode. Both Volleyball and Steven have interesting arcs when it comes to their relationships with Pink Diamond. Both of them are kind of in denial, but it's different flavors of denial. In the case of Volleyball, how she tried to cope with all the terrible things that happened in her life was by pretending they didn't happen. When Steven questioned her about her time under White Diamond's control, Volleyball just went, "Oh, nope, don't remember a thing. It's just 6,000 years, blip, gone," which, under normal circumstances, that would be very much harrowing. If I woke up from a 6,000-year nap and realized that I'd been asleep for that long, that I was being controlled by this big white bitch with a gem in her forehead, my first question would be, what the fuck did I miss? But we don't ever get that from Volleyball. She just kind of brushes it off and acts like it's a non-issue. And then likewise, whenever the topic of Pink Diamond is brought up, she doesn't acknowledge the trauma that comes with the scar. In fact, when she mentions that Pink Diamond was responsible, it's like, "Oh no, this is Pink Diamond." Like all she does is just mention that Pink Diamond was responsible and then leaves it at that. After and pretty much any other time that she talks about Pink Diamond afterwards, she's reminiscing about the good times that she had with Pink Diamond, because at the end of the day, yeah, it was an accident. And the thing is, the Crewniverse had made it clear that Pink Diamond very much regretted what she did to Volleyball. In fact, if you actually look at a storyboard that Rebecca Sugar once posted, there is one picture of Pink Diamond just looking horrified as she's covering her mouth and trying to suppress tears, and then a voice off screen says, "Be sure not to break this one." Which, that's meant to imply that when Pink Diamond had her tantrum after White Diamond told her no, when she wound up hurting her original Pearl, she broke. Actually broke, because she realized, oh my god, I hurt someone I cared about. I don't want this. I didn't want that. And as a result, you could argue that that ultimately might have spurred her to want to improve. Like, that might have been the first step. That her tantrums finally resulted in something that she cared about. Someone that she cared about getting actually genuinely hurt. And the thing is, based on what we saw from Steven's dream during the Homeworld arc at the end of Steven Universe, we know that Pink Diamond and Volleyball did used to be close. They used to goof around a little. They were like close friends. So it does show. So the fact that Pink Diamond, in one of her attitudes, actually hurting her so deeply, yeah, I can kind of understand that. And so it showed. But the thing is, Volleyball doesn't want to acknowledge that Pink Diamond did hurt her that bad. Oh, she'll acknowledge that Pink Diamond caused the scar, but she openly does not acknowledge any of the shit Pink Diamond did. If she even brings up the tantrums or how destructive her powers were, she just goes off and off like, oh, you know how she was, throwing fits and tantrums. She had a scream that could break the walls. Like, these are not normal things that you talk about. And it basically just kind of showcases someone who basically is so used to this abuse and trauma that she's normalized it and pretends that nothing is wrong, that everything is fine, that she's all happy and sweet and loving and caring, and this is a perfect relationship, when in reality, no. It's far from perfect, and there is still clear damage. It's showcased physically with the scar on her face not healing up, despite the fact that the damage that Pink Diamond did to her was healed. And then likewise, psychologically, it's clear that she didn't want to acknowledge them. When Steven wound up getting angry and yelled at both Pearls, Volleyball cowered and was afraid. Which, the way that she quickly just went right into the fetal position just showcased how used to this that she was. But then likewise, when Shell scanned Volleyball and said that the root cause of the scar was psychological, you can see Volleyball looking scared and then shocked and afraid, because ultimately, whether she's consciously aware of it or not, she knows that the scar is probably tied to her trauma connected to Pink Diamond. And so ultimately, when faced with the reality that she might have to confront those feelings, she doesn't want to. In fact, she doubles down, which just makes the scar worse. Basically, we see her acting in denial, not wanting to acknowledge the part that Pink Diamond played in her current state. And likewise, just trying to remember all the good they had. But by essentially trying to deny that trauma, it in turn makes it worse. And it's only by finally acknowledging the trauma that we see her finally finally get into some form of healing. And what I do like about this is that, like I said, we don't see by the end of the episode if her scar heals. It's still very much and pretty much at the end of the episode, we only see her in profile from this side. So we only see her good eye. We don't know if her other eye has been fixed. And likewise, when she makes cameos when she appears in other episodes in the series, there's always something that obstructs this side of her face. So you never know if she's actually been healed or not, which I like that. It leaves it very open-ended. We know that we have no idea whether she's fully recovered from the trauma or just come to terms with it. And I kind of like that. I do like that. It essentially helps. It's essentially a nice way of leaving it open-ended without actually, and without actually telling us if volleyball has is actually moving past all this, or if she still needs more time. I dig that. I like that, and I like that we actually did kind of further examine that. But then, likewise, well, we have her set of denial over here. On the other side, we have Steven. And the thing is, and like I said, this is present in both Rosebuds and Volleyball. Steven's also dealing with his own form of denial when it comes to his mother. But whereas Volleyball just kind of tries to brush off the severity of all the things that Pink Diamond did, Steven does recognize the severity, but wants to just fix it and move on as quickly as possible. In his own words, he doesn't want to think about the bad things. He just wants to move on to the good things, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get to that point. To the point where even when it starts showcasing when it starts showcasing itself on him physically, like when he starts turning pink, he tries denying it. Hell, when he first turns pink right in front of Volleyball, she initially does look a little afraid, most likely because of her trauma, but then as Steven tries calming himself down and says, "It's okay, I'm sorry, it's just baggage," when she tries extending a hand to ask if he's okay, he just knocks it aside. He's like, no, it's fine, it's not, but this isn't about me, it's all about you, which, the thing is, this is a hint towards what's going on in Mr. Universe's head. Keep in mind, because like I said, kind of going back to the Rosebuds episode, throughout that episode, Steven did not want to talk about what happened with his mother. At no point in the episode did he ever want to bring it up. He just wanted to keep socializing with the Rose Quartzes and hope that at some point it would all, work itself out and everything would be okay. But by ignoring the problems, it just made them more apparent. And we see that continually showcased in this episode. Steven does want to genuinely help Volleyball. But despite what Steven would claim, there is an ulterior motive to this. And it's not that the thing is, it's because it's not just because he wants to push past everything his mom did and just try to fix all of her problems. And no. The thing is, what Steven is dealing with is himself. Going back to the Rosebuds episode, while Steven did eventually open up to the Rose Quartzes about his issues with his mom and about how he about how while he doesn't want to hold anything against the Roses, he can't help but still make the comparisons. In the case of this episode, and the thing is, he only really did that when he realized that he actually hurt the Rose Quartzes, and he wanted to try and come to terms, and he wanted to, let them know that they did nothing wrong, that it was all him. And that did lead to some emotional catharsis on both sides, but Steven only did that when his actions started hurting someone. But likewise in this episode, Steven never has that moment. The only time he actually talks about all these issues he's been going through is when he kind of hits his emotional breaking point with the Pearls arguing over what kind of a person Rose Quartz / Pink Diamond really was. And the thing is, Steven does not want to talk about it anymore. He's does not want to hear about what kind of a person his mother was. Throughout the entirety of the original series, Steven little by little had that pedestal chipped away until it finally shattered and he learned that his mother was really Pink Diamond and that she pulled a lot of shady shit behind the scenes. That she faked her own shattering, caused the Gem War to escalate to a point that it wouldn't have gone to before, hid Bismuth away when Bismuth proposed, hey, let's shatter a diamond, and then likewise, and then even more fuel to the fire. 2 years later, he learned that his mother abandoned her playmate on some random asteroid floating through nowhere space, and then now he's learning that his mother apparently was an abuser. That in one of her tantrums she accidentally hurt someone she cared about, and to the point where she had to be fucking replaced with a new Pearl. It's something he doesn't want to acknowledge. He just wants to push past it, move on, and pretend it never happened. But that's the problem. How Steven is coping, but going back to what kind of why Steven's not acknowledging these problems, how he's coping. Once the instant that Steven learns that his mother was responsible for what happened to Volleyball, his immediate response is that I just need to fix this. I need to focus on her. When Volleyball offers a hand of support, Steven just says, no, this isn't about me. This is about you. We got to focus on you. He doesn't want to talk about these sorts of things. And yes, we see that showcased throughout the episode as Steven is just kind of in a hurry to figure out what's at the root of Volleyball's problems. But anytime those problems have something to do with his mother, he doesn't want to acknowledge them. Instead, try and focusing on Volleyball. And it showcases that Steven is dealing with a lot more shit. Now, here's the thing. The episode also showcases that the whole Pink transformation is probably tied to the destructive side of his powers, because Steven inherited all of his powers from his mother, and if his mother was a healer when she gave birth to Steven, well, the thing is, those destructive powers didn't just go away. She still had them, it's just that she didn't use them anymore, and now Steven has them, and as Steven continues having his emotional breakdown, we start seeing those powers coming out in full, and likewise, we now get a bigger connect, and likewise, we now do learn more about them, that they are connected more to Steven's Diamond side, about how Pink Diamond was a destructive force once upon a time, which honestly I think paints those powers in a very negative light, because we already know that those powers were linked to negative emotions before, considering that the first time Steven went pink was when he was fighting Jasper and she was calling him useless, and the next time we saw that was when he was fused with Amethyst and made Smokey, and Smokey was freaking out because she couldn't make it to a roller coaster in time to save all the people on there. So now we see now we start to see more of how the pink powers are coming out, as Steven is just constantly having to face a very dark reality that he just wants to put behind him. But the thing is, how he wants to put it behind him is not by acknowledging the impact it has left on his life. He wants to put it behind him by focusing on someone else's problem. And before you bring up how Steven has talked about his problems in the past, which, yeah, Steven has, but you gotta remember one very important thing. Steven's only brought up those issues if they were brought up to help someone else. When Amethyst was dealing with her identity crisis, Steven only opened up to her about his own insecurities because it would let Amethyst know that she wasn't alone. Because it allowed Amethyst to find a kindred spirit. Which, yes, it had the added benefit... Excuse me a sec. Sorry about that, I was talking so much my throat went dry. But, yeah, while opening up to Amethyst did give Steven the added benefit of getting some much-needed emotional catharsis himself, again, the only reason he opened up to Amethyst about those insecurities was because she had her own insecurities, and basically, by learning that she wasn't alone, it allowed Amethyst to heal. Yes, it led to a better connection between her and Steven, but Steven has not acknowledged these problems unless they've been staring him right in the face. When Steven and Connie were Stevani, and Steven's issues were manifesting as hallucinations, Steven only acknowledged them because Connie was there. And basically Steven had to come to terms with the fact that Steven had to come to terms with all this fact. And Steven had to come to terms with it. Basically, and even then, after Steven learned that Rose Quartz was Pink Diamond, he only really had one moment where he was allowed to talk about it before he wanted to refocus his efforts on helping other people. My point is this. Steven does not want to talk about the bad. He actively buries the bad as much as he physically can. And how he typically tries to do that, he focuses on other issues. And so, as a result, he puts himself he puts his all into wanting to help others. And as a result, much like how Volleyball was just trying to pretend all the bad things with Pink Diamond were not a big deal, Steven is equally guilty of being in denial by trying to push it away and acting like it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, the more he doesn't talk about it, the more it festers. And it's kind of fucked up, and it showcases and it kind of gives us a bit of a window into what's going on in Steven's mind and how it's affecting, and basically what he's going through as well. Now, don't get me wrong, the stuff with Volleyball is very much good, is very much well done. As it continues showcase, as I do like seeing Volleyball's journey throughout all this, as she has to come to terms with this same reality as well. That she has to that she has to stop making excuses for Pink Diamond, because at the end of the day, whether Pink Diamond meant to or not, she still hurt Volleyball, and ultimately, the real purpose of this journey was not to just heal the wound, but also to give her some clarity, to bring Volleyball to a state of mind where she can finally begin accepting the good and the bad about Pink Diamond, and the fact that and likewise, and the fact that she can find someone in Pearl that she can share this pain with, it helps her. While we never know if her eye is ever healed, at the very least, it does. Sorry. While we never learn that her eye is healed, the fact that she now has someone that she can share this pain with, this loss, this anger, this anger, this trauma, it shows that there is still a light. And the fact that she's now ready to acknowledge this past trauma does showcase that even if her eye isn't healed, at the very least, there may come a time when it will be, as she now has the tools to properly move past it. Likewise, I can say this right now, Volleyball's adorable. She's like a massive delight. She's very perky, very friendly, very nice. She's just and it's in a way it is kind of adorable seeing her pining for Pink Diamond like Pearl used to be. It's like deja vu in a certain sense. Even Pearl acknowledges that looking at that Volleyball is like looking at a younger version of herself, even though Volleyball's older. But likewise, it's still adorable seeing Volleyball do this. And while I do like the emotional catharsis that comes from seeing Volleyball and Pearl connecting, there is also another aspect of the episode that, well, goes past all those nice little emotions and gets right to the part of the show that my inner little boy loves: action. Especially when we get the appearance of Mega Pearl in the episode. I like how she is. I like that we do see kind of a twist on seeing two gems of the same type fusing together. As, like I said, Pearl and Volleyball are two very different gems, and so likewise, while their fusion is ultimately just a bigger Pearl, she does contain aspects of both individual Pearls that do fit into her overall fusion. And I like how they kind of mix well as she becomes someone of regal stature and authority. And likewise, her skills are a mix of the things that both Pearls are adept at. As she's ultimately a good fighter, but she fights with such adeptness and skill, like she's doing an interpretive dance, which I think works for both Pearls considering their histories. I think it's sweet. I like it, and I like it, and I like it. And so, on the whole, Volleyball is very much an emotional roller coaster, but it really delves into some darker places and does shed light on a lot of twists on these types of feelings and their emotions. And I like how we see it interpreted through two very different styles. With Steven, we see him just trying to actively deny all the negativity and try and move past it as quickly as possible without actually acknowledging it. And then likewise with Volleyball, she just likes to pretend that all the bad things never happened and just tries to live in her own little fantasy world, which, as a result, it just makes the trauma worse. And likewise, I like seeing the emotional journey that Volleyball goes through as she finally has to acknowledge the trauma that she's been through, while also finding someone that she can confide in Pearl. As that really does give us some bit of emotional clarity, as now both Pearls can essentially share the full picture with one another, which I like. And while Volleyball, like I said, only comes back in like little cameos in later episodes, at the very least, I do like that she and Pearl have made that connection. And likewise, I like that the episode further kind of clarifies things with Steven and what's going on with him. How the pink powers were kind of established because of what his mother and her previous attitude. I like how that's built up. I like the trauma, how it's connected, and I like how we see it's connected to the destructive side of Pink Diamond's abilities, and we further showcase just how dangerous they can truly be. I like that. So, yeah, on the whole, Volleyball is an emotional roller coaster, but very much one worth getting on. So, yeah, so at the end of the day, Rosebud's very sweet, very fun episode that really does like to kind of revel in cringe comedy as we see Steven and the Gems try and not be awkward around the roses but fail at every turn, while also giving us a nice emotional end as Steven is able to finally connect with the rose quartzes and, actually open up to them, which does finally allow them to get some open air, finally kind of open a window, it allows them to actually acknowledge the issues and allows them to form a genuine connection, while likewise Volleyball very much delves into a bit of the dark side with Bo delves into a bit of a dark side as we see Volleyball's journey as she tries to come to terms with her trauma and negative emotions, as we see Steven as he's dealing with his own issues and how they're connected to his powers and his past, while likewise still giving us a nice emotional ending point with seeing Pearl and Volleyball connect as they both are able to share their trauma and memories while giving each other a full picture of the person that Pink Diamond was, while also giving us some genuinely awesome action in the form of Mega Pearl. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you next Friday as we are introduced to, two of Steven. Let's just say that not everyone in the universe is happy that Steven is where he is now. So, till then, I hope you have a good night, and take care.